aspect of our culture that has so degraded biblical manhood, so degraded fatherhood, that the picture of a father that we find in the scriptures looks nothing like what we've become accustomed to. And I believe it's because we do not view fatherhood in this way that we are not absolutely undone by fatherlessness. It's okay. We celebrate it. It's no big deal. There are divorce parties now. It's no big deal. No, it is. First and foremost, because of the theological implications and the picture that we paint. But secondly, when you look at the role of a father in his home, understand that you are taking something crucial away from a household, from a woman and a child. A woman who's to be nurtured and protected and cared for and instructed. Children who are to be disciplined and discipled, protected, provided for. All of a sudden we turn that on its head, completely violate this picture that God intended to paint theologically through that relationship, and at the same time completely annihilate, from a practical perspective, this function of a household that is to be headed by a godly husband and father. Now here's the good news. The good news is God can make up the difference. Amen. The good news is fatherlessness is not a death sentence. The good news is God can be a father to the fatherless. But we have to be careful. It's one thing to believe that God can make up the difference. It's another thing to say that it doesn't matter. And I'm afraid that we lean toward the latter and not the former. Because we've seen so much fatherlessness. The broken home has become a normal home in our sight. And our hearts don't break. Theologically, it's not, because it mars this picture that God paints through marriage. Practically, it's not, because raising children was never intended to be a one-man job. Certainly not a one-woman job. It's not okay. And so we need to watch, fight, and pray for the family. We need to call young men to account. Raise them with a high view of fatherhood. Especially men who do not have fathers, who've been raised with a warped picture, and who have been taught every day of their life that they've lived without a father, that fatherhood is not necessary. We need to invest in the lives of fatherless young men. If you are raising a young man by yourself, please don't tell him that you're better off. Please don't communicate that to him. Please don't put a picture in his mind that says you don't need God's way. Tell him that God is sufficient, that God is able, and that God is there. But make sure you also tell him this is not what God intends. And beg God that he never comes to accept it himself. Pray for the widow and for the orphan. And by all means, when you have an opportunity, invest.